I'd like to introduce our next speaker now. Gerald Welt received his Juris Doctorate from California Western School of Law in San Diego, California, and has been in the practice of law since 1973. He practices workers' compensation and Social Security disability law. He has served on the Nevada Justice Association's Board of Governors since 1979 and is very active in the State Bar of Nevada as a member of both the Professionalism Committee and the Lawyers Referral and Information Services Committee. Gerald is a member and past state chairman of the Nevada Organization of Social Security Claimant Representatives and was named as a colleague of the Nevada Law Foundation. He has volunteered in a variety of capacities for numerous charitable and nonprofit organizations. Please help me in welcoming Gerald Welt.
That's very impressive. It has nothing to do with what I'm going to tell you, so hopefully it will go offline momentarily. I'm talking about Social Security disability, as you know. Sort of interesting sandwich between these two presentations. The one you've just heard obviously has to do with your employment, your relationship with your employer, your relationship after you leave employment. The one following me is to do with workers' comp, what happens if you're injured on the job. What I'm going to talk to you about is a complete absence of employment. And that's really the test for Social Security disability. You will have heard a number of rumors, and your friends and your brother-in-law will tell you how the system works and who got benefits and who doesn't. But let me try to clear up some of that initially. One, you have to be seriously injured. You have to be sick. The process, and I'll explain how we get there, could take 2 to 3 years here. It could take 5 years in other jurisdictions. So all my clients are sick or ill. Now, they may not be sick or ill enough for the Social Security Administration through their regulations and rules, but these people are sick and they're injured. And it would be very rare that anyone would be able to gam the system and get on Social Security without having a severe problem. The reason being, you have to prove Social Security disability by objective medical evidence. You just can't walk in there and say, oh, my back hurts. I had surgery 12 years ago. It's gotten a lot worse now, and I know I can't work. Won't fly. You have to have a doctor. You have to have objective testing. You have to have some means of proving to Social Security, besides your word, that you're totally disabled. The test is simple, that you are so disabled that you cannot do any job that exists in the national economy for a period that has lasted or can be expected to last 1 year. Now, most people, in the way the system works, you file an initial application. For most types of Social Security, you can do that online at socialsecurity.gov or ssa.gov. You go there, you bring up the disability application. It's a lengthy, burdensome application. It wants to know name, addresses, phone numbers, doctors, places of employment, medications, daily living. It goes on for pages and pages. A lawyer can help you with that, but you're going to have to fill out all that fundamental information. Once you do that, the process starts. It's a simple way to get it going. Effectively, if you haven't been off work for a year, Social Security is going to turn you down initially, because their test is that you have to be off work for at least a year for the process to start. A doctor can say with certain things, well, they haven't been off work a year yet, but they're going to be off work. Terminal illnesses, those kinds of things. Permanent paraplegic, quadriplegic injuries may result in you being off. So the doctor could say it in advance, but they're very rare, and typically, if you apply, they're going to turn you down for at least a year. And I'll go through that detail in a second. There's 2 fundamental means of obtaining Social Security disability, not counting children's benefits. Children's benefits are completely different. I'm not going to address them. If anyone has any questions, they can see me after or call me in my office. They're very difficult to get these days. If your child has ADD or ADHD, I can almost guarantee you're not going to get benefits for that child. I get calls every day from parents who have children with ADD. I know it's tough to deal with. I have grandchildren that have that, but it is not a disability under Social Security by itself. It can be if it's really extreme. So besides the children's benefits, there's Social Security Disability, SSDI, it's called Title II. That's regular disability for people who have been employed. Fundamentally, Social Security says you have to have worked 20 out of the last 40 quarters or 5 out of the last 10 years. So you have to be a working person in order to get regular disability. It's an insurance policy. You have to pay into the system in order to get the benefits. Just like if you have a private disability policy, if you don't pay the premium, you don't get the benefit. Same thing with Social Security. If, however, you don't meet that requirement, there is something for people with no assets and who have not worked. It's called Supplemental Security Income, SSI, Title 16. SSI is not regular Social Security disability. People confuse the two all the time. SSI is a welfare-based program. You can have no more than $2,000 in the bank. You can have no assets. You can have virtually no money coming in, meaning you're destitute and this is all you're going to get. The maximum benefit under SSI is $700 a month. The benefit under Title II or regular Social Security disability is about $2,300 depending on your income, and there's an averaging, and if you're making maximum over a course of 5 years, it goes up to about that plus 50% of that for any of your family dependents. So you could get in the mid 3,000s depending on how big your family is and what your income level was. The other big difference between SSI and SSDI or Social Security Disability is if you get on Social Security Disability, the regular disability program, 29 months after the date Social Security finds you disabled, you're eligible for Medicare. So you'd have full Medicare just as if you had retired at age 65 or 66. Full insurance benefits there. You pay the premium, but you would have the benefit. SSI, you are not eligible for Medicare. You would get the state program of Medicaid, again, the welfare-based health insurance program. Your benefits are limited, but they're certainly better than nothing. SSI, Medicaid, and that starts right away, by the way. And Social Security Disability, it's Medicare, and it's 29 months later. The reason it's 29 months is if you are working and you go off work on COBRA, the initial COBRA period is 18 months. If you're disabled, they extend it for another 11, hence the 29 that Medicare picks up. So how do they get there? How do they determine that you're disabled? As I told you, first question is there any objective medical evidence of your problem, not just your word or your cousin's word that you don't feel good? So they're going to look to see if you're performing any substantial gainful activity. Basically, in their lingo, that means are you working? They tell you, and this is a big caution, if you go into the office or you call on the 800 number, and by the way, I've been at national conferences with the people who run the Social Security Administration, and they have admitted that the 800 number gives out bad information. So I don't know what to tell you from there, but they do. And people come into my office all the time saying, oh, I just called Social Security and they told me. And I have to say, okay, but they're wrong. That's just not the answer. And here's one of the things they tell you all the time. Yes, you can work, but if you earn under $1,000 a month, then you're eligible, that's the word they use, for Social Security Disability. So people say, okay, well, I've got this really terrible disease, but I'm dragging myself in, and I'm working, and I'm only earning $1,000 a month, and that's certainly not going to go very far with my family of 4, but at least it keeps us off the street. Then they apply for Social Security Disability, and Social Security says, well, we notice you're earning $980 a month. If you worked another 5 minutes a day, you would be over the $1,000 threshold, hence, you're not disabled. So the bottom line is if you're applying for Social Security Disability, you cannot be working at any job, at any income level. Otherwise, you're going to get denied. I mean, it's really that straightforward. Now, there are probably exceptions to that, but they're very, very limited. So if you came into my office and asked me, I'd have to tell you cannot be working for at least a year. After the first year, once you meet that threshold, it is possible for some limited part-time employment. They allow you to do that. It could be sheltered kind of employment. You could work for your uncle who allows you to lay down when your back's killing you. You don't have to go in on a regular basis. Maybe you work from home doing selling eBay for your neighbors. There are things you can do after that first year. The first year you can't work at all, no matter what Social Security tells you. The next test is, do you have this severe impairment? Again, objective medical evidence. In order to make it uniform throughout the country, Social Security has attempted to put together listings of impairments. So they take what are typical illnesses or injuries, they come up with a definition, and theoretically, if you meet the definition, then they say, okay, you're disabled. It doesn't work that way. Let me just give you an easy one. The low back, you would think that's easy to diagnose. It says you have to have evidence of nerve root compression, a couple other things, lumbar spinal stenosis, herniated disc, all things you may have heard of. Doctors easily diagnose them. I have clients that walk in with those diagnoses, meets the listing 104. They say, no, we don't believe it. So it doesn't matter. We just have to keep going. If you meet a listing, and there's some things that will do it, COPD, lung problems. If you have a pulmonary test and they come up with these numbers, it's hard for them to argue you don't meet the listing, so they will grant the benefit. There are other means they do it, but they've broken it down to 14 various sections based on body parts, musculoskeletal, cardiac, and so forth, mental. And if you meet the listing, then you can get benefits at that level. If you don't meet the listing, then they go further and they want to know if there's any vocational relevant work you can perform even with your disability. I mean, there's plenty of people that have the things that are listed in this book that are able to work. May not be as severe as your particular impairment. So there's a process, and I don't really have enough time to go through the whole process. Basically, they look at your age, your experience, your training, your education, and see if you have any job skills that can move from what you were doing to something else. I get all the time, I'm a 44-year-old iron worker, I hurt my back, I can't go back to work as an iron worker, can I get disability? No. The test is you can't do any work that exists in the national economy. Any work. Take tickets in a movie theater, make change at a gas station, be a hostess at a restaurant. An iron worker with a bad back, perhaps, could do those kinds of jobs. Hence, they don't meet the test for disability. They then break it down. I don't think we need to go through that because I want to give you the process and how long it takes so you know. The first step, as I said, is file the application. There are lawyers that can help you. I don't think there's many in this town that do initial apps. We do because you have to do so much of the work, but we like to bring you in and go through the application to make sure we give as much information as possible to the administration. The initial applications are taking 4 to 6 months, and they'd turn down the majority of them. The next step is what's called reconsideration. It's a paper appeal. It basically says, you're wrong, we're right. You have to relook at it, and here's some more medical evidence. If you didn't read it the first time, here's more of it. Those are taking 6 to 12 months. Nationwide, I think they're turning down about 85% of them. So looking at the longest periods, we're already up to 18 months from the date you applied, and in some cases, you may have been off work a year already. We then request a hearing in front of an administrative law judge. That's currently taking 8 to 12 months to get a hearing date here. We win an overwhelming majority of those cases, but you could be up to 3 years. That's why I say there aren't many fakers in the system. You have to be real dedicated to be off work for 3 years, having no income, and the hopes that you're going to get some minimal benefit from Social Security at the end. Assuming you lose at the administrative law judge level, the law used to be better. They've just changed it, and it's made it very difficult. It used to be we could, again, do a paper appeal to the appeals council. We would write a brief appealing it, and the judges, in fairness to them, it's very difficult to comply with all the requirements to get a coherent decision. They may not believe the client, but they have to cover all the bases. It left us a lot of room to appeal. The judges here are very good. Judges around the country are not. Our judges, although I don't always agree with them, are professional, respectful. They run, I think, a fair, impartial hearing. That doesn't mean, of course, we win all our cases, but at least you're treated with respect. I can't, unfortunately, say that about all the judges across the country. In any event, if we do, it used to be if we lost, we could go to the Appeals Council. It's a brief, but at the same time, we could have our clients file a new application. So if we have new medical evidence, and we could start the process again. Now they won't let you do that. It's either or. Appeals Council takes 18 months. Could be quicker, but... And if you lose there, then you can go to federal district court. It takes about a year. So there are legitimately claims that have gone 5 years or longer. And those time frames I just gave you are longer in other parts of the country than they are here. So, I mean, we can be successful, and all those can be shorter. You can get benefits quicker than those time frames I gave you. It happens. I tell my clients it's sort of like winning the lottery. I have had people who have had cancer so bad of the abdomen that their internal organs are outside and they've lost. I've had clients on the list for a heart transplant. They have not lost eventually, lost for the first 2 stages. In front of a judge, we've won. But so I can't tell you, you walk into my office, my doctor said I'm disabled, I have all this medical evidence, this is a slam dunk, right? Nope. We'll go through it, we'll move it as fast as we can, but you need to know you have to make arrangements with friends, family, church, synagogue, Clark County Social Services. You're going to have to live for a couple of years without any income. So it's not a happy story. It's a happy story at the end when we finally get you on benefits, because then you're on for the rest of your life or until you improve. So that's sort of it in a nutshell. I have a small amount of time. It's a very detailed process. I guess my last bit of advice to you is if you go to someone to help you with this, make sure that they know what they're doing, that they've been doing it for a while, and they're familiar with the system. It is a very specialized area of the law. A generalist can't do this kind of work. I might be able to write a simple will, do a simple contract. I wouldn't go any further than that, but for sure you need to know what's going on because it's its own little segment. So happy to answer any questions. Sorry it had to be so quick.
Okay, the question is, I have a Social Security hearing tomorrow. What will happen?
Okay, assuming it's with the judge, not a reconsideration face-to-face hearing. One, if you have a case, I suggest you ask the judge for a continuance so you can get counsel. Absent that, the judge will ask you a series of questions trying to determine whether you're disabled. He will frankly first try to ask you to get counsel. They don't like having claimants there without counsel because we can help speed up the process and give them what they need. But if all that won't happen, they're going to ask you a series of questions. There may be a vocational expert there who will testify as to your job experience and will answer hypothetical questions. There could be a medical examiner there, a doctor, who will answer questions about, probably on the phone, but would answer questions about your medical condition.
How often does Social Security evaluate people on SSDI?
Well, they say they're going to, sometimes you'll get a notice after you get it that they're going to review you in a year. Last I knew, there were 1 million to 1.5 million cases behind on those continuing disability reviews. So, again, there's no rhyme or reason that we can determine as to who they review and who they don't. So I can't give you an answer to that. You may never get reviewed. It's not a regular thing. They don't review you every 3 years. They don't have the staff to do that.
Can you draw a pension and still qualify for Social Security disability?
Yeah, sure. The only exception to that is if you're a state employee, at least in this state, you've paid into PERS as a police officer, a teacher, or state worker. So you've been paying into PERS rather than the Social Security Administration. So you don't get Social Security. You get PERS, both for disability retirement or retirement.
Have you ever successfully represented a gambler in a Social Security claim, a professional gambler?
Not a problem as long as have paid Social Security taxes, then we can get regular Social Security. I actually have a client who's a poor retired gambler, not a very successful one, so he's applying for SSI, but that has been his occupation for the last 5 or 6 years, but because he didn't pay into the system, then all we can get him is SSI, and the advantage is that we've pretty much proven that he does really not have transferable job skills as a professional gambler, so that will help in that proof.
All right, everyone, please join me in thanking Mr. Welt for a very nice presentation on Social Security disability. We'll take a